Whenever they have construction that goes way over, I think about the Big Dig in Boston.
Yeah.
Do you know about that?
No.
The Big Dig was a thing that was going on when I was a kid, and a bunch of people went to jail. they were,
so we can hear where it's going, at least.
Super slow playing the dig in this tunnel because they didn't want the jobs to go away.
Right.
And they did a terrible job. It took forever. It was, I think they called it one of the most corrupt construction projects in the history of the United States.
And that's saying something.
It finished more than 10 years after it was supposed to be finished.
No.
Like, I already moved out of Boston, but I came back like many, many years later. I'm like, this thing's still around? They're still doing this? $14.8 billion later, the Big Dig finally complete. When the clock runs out on 2007, construction of the Big Dig, the nation's most complex and costliest highway project, will officially come to an end. They were doing that when I was living in there in the 1980s. Wow. They were working on it. Wild. They finished it in 2007. Yep. So what is the, like, it was super corrupt, right? Didn't a bunch of people go to jail? I'm not saying that the people that are making the nuclear power plants are doing the same thing.
Well, it started at $2.6 billion and ended up at $14.8.
Wow.
Whoa.
What can they do to stop it? Well, the game strategy is clear. They've deployed it before, right? So, they'll say things like, "This is welfare for politicians. This is just corrupting speech. You don't believe in the First Amendment. You don't believe that, the Koch brothers or the Soroses the right to spend unlimited amounts of money in political speech." And so I think the way around that fight is to agree free speech is the fundamental. And nothing of the reforms I support, like try to restrict people's ability to speak. What we're talking is congressmen raising money. We're not talking about individuals speaking in the marketplace. So you have a very loud voice, Joe. Your voice is heard by millions. And nothing in our Constitution should permit government to be able to suppress you at all, so long as you're within the bounds of decency, or at least not decency, because that's not boundary that this podcast obeys often, but at least if you're not, spreading false rumors and causing great harm. But the point is, even though this free speech needs to be protected, we still should be able to focus on the influence, the economy of influence congressmen live under when they spend 30 to 70% of the time sucking up to the lesters to fund their campaigns. That should be a focus of regulation without the First Amendment getting in the way, because we want a Congress filled with people who care about what their voters want, not what their funders want. The framers didn't create a constitution to replicate an aristocracy. They were fighting an aristocracy. They had a system where there was a house, the House of Lords, that had to ask the aristocracy, what do you want? And everything could be blocked if the aristocracy didn't like it. Well, we've replicated that system more efficiently in America than they had there, because we have a system where both the House of Representatives and the Senate is filled with people who are obsessed with a single question: what do my funders want? And if they can't answer that question in a way that supports the legislation, they're not going to support the legislation. Or if it's important for them to block legislation, they will block legislation. And that's the dynamic of Washington right now. Francis Fukuyama describes our government as a vetocracy, veto-ocracy. And what he means by that is that there are so many places where influence, powerful influence, can block the ability of the government to do something that it just can't do anything anymore. And that's, I think, the consequence of allowing this corruption of money to be so deeply woven into our political system.
Is it possible to fix?
Yeah, it is possible to fix. Because, for example, H.R. 1 plus Ro Khanna's bill, all perfectly constitutional. You wouldn't have to amend the Constitution to do it. I think that bill alone would solve 80% of the problem. The problem isn't like conceiving of what changes have to happen. The question is, how do you build the political movement to get there? And what that takes is leaders willing to say, we have to fix this corrupted democracy first. And leaders who stop like pretending that we can get like a Christmas list of great changes in government without fixing this democracy first. So, Bernie published last month in the Washington Post list of the 10 things that should happen in the first 100 days of the next Democratic administration. 10 great ideas. Not a single one of those ideas addressed the corruption of our political system. It was just a Christmas list of all the things that the progressives want. And, I'm a progressive. I want some of those things. But the point is...
Like what things were they?
Well, things like $1 trillion infrastructure projects, single-payer healthcare, free college, all the things that Bernie is pushing and has made so salient, and things that I think it's great that he has made salient. I mean, he's a hero in making these issues central to at least the debate. But what frustrates me is that instead of focusing our anger on the billionaires, which he does, we need to focus more anger on the congressmen, the politicians, which he does not. I mean, the guy's been in Congress for almost 30 years now. And so it might be natural for him not to notice that the people around him are the problem.
I just think that he's possibly aware of the consequences of stirring up that hornet's nest. Because, if anybody has a right to complain, when the DNC conspired to rig the primaries against him, he's the number one guy. He should be screaming from the rooftops, you're dealing with a corrupt system, and this is disgusting. And he didn't do that. And he didn't do that while Hillary Clinton was running for president, and he knew it. He knew he had been screwed out of the primaries. He knew they had conspired. He knew it was all illegal, and he kind of just kept his mouth shut.
Yeah, well, that was a responsibility. I think that was a kind of, I was a person reflecting on the horrendous outcome if he took Hillary Clinton down. I think he restrained himself, not perfectly. I mean, the fact is, after it was clear he was not going to be the nominee, he still continued to talk about the corruption around Hillary, which Donald then picked up and turned into a weapon against her. But I think he recognized, as every responsible politician does, that, it's not just about him. It's about the future of America. So when he restrained himself and didn't want to take the whole system down then, I get that. But
right.
I'm talking about now.
Right.
I'm talking about when you've got the House of Representatives talking about fundamental reform. It'll be the first thing they take up. We at least ought to have a presidential campaign where candidates are saying, hell yes, the first thing we will do is to end the corruption that makes it impossible for this Congress to function, and stop pretending like we can get all these wonderful things given to us by Santa Claus without fixing this first. You got to do the hard work of convincing America that there is a solution. As the reality is, I think most of America is where you started this podcast. Most of America thinks it's deeply corrupted and there's nothing that can be done. They're half right. It is deeply corrupted. But it's not true there's nothing that can be done. We can do something. In fact, I think we can solve almost, 80% of it. I still think there's constitutional changes that might be necessary. And I've been working how do we get constitutional changes and talking to people. My podcast, which of course has about 1/millionth of the people listening to it that yours does. But
what is your podcast so people can listen to it?
It's Another Way. So season 2 is released today, which is about an Article 5 convention. But season 1 was about how to think about the 2020 election. But I think that we might have to have constitutional change, and I have been supporting the effort to think about that. But what we've got to do is to give people a sense that there's something we can do before we amend the Constitution. We did a poll and found 96% of Americans believe it important to reduce the influence of money in politics. 91% didn't think it was possible. So that's the politics of resignation. If you'd gone to Egypt under Mubarak and you'd stopped the average person on the street and said, what do you think of Mubarak? They would have said, we hate Mubarak. And they'd say, well, why aren't you doing anything about it? And they'd say, because nothing can be done. Or, African Americans in 1900 in America. What do you think about Jim Crow? We hate Jim Crow. Why aren't you doing anything about it? Well, because there's nothing to be done about it. Well, that's how Americans think about this political. They hate it. They think it's deeply unjust, inconsistent with what they thought America was about. But they don't do anything about it because they don't think there's anything to be done about it. And that's where leaders have a role. And what we need are leaders running president right now to begin to explain to people, here's what we could do if only we built the power to do it. Recognizing the most important opposition here, the lobbyists in Washington, are going to be an incredibly difficult group to defeat. But we can do that. And if we do that, the other issue becomes easier to resolve in a sense.
To you, as there's a lot of room for fuckery.
Calderon era, Bush administration era, there was a lot of stuff going on. Obama administration era, after the whole Fast and the Furious thing, things kind of went dark for a while.
Explain a lot of people don't know what the Fast and the Furious is. It was they had sold guns to the cartel under the guise that this is the way they would track the guns.
Yes.
It seems so fishy.
Oh, I learned about it from CNN, and a few of my friends were killed with some of those guns down there, which is, everybody talks about the U.S. agent that was in Mexico was killed by some of these guns, but there was a lot of Mexican agents and people, civilians killed by these guns as well. So there were very specific types of guns. So like imagine somebody giving you a shopping list about types of guns you want, right? Mm-hmm. Including in these lists were 50 cal Barrett rifles and FN-57s, which are it's a pistol with a very high velocity round that goes through soft armor, like the type of stuff that was issued to us, right? So all of a sudden we were seeing these space pistols in the hands of the cartels in very specific parts of the country. We're like,
but what a preposterous idea that they were going to sell it to the cartel so that they could track them.
Well,
like that sounds like horseshit to me. That sounds like someone was trying to make money, and they said, "Oh, we'll just say we're selling it to them to track it."
Well, the suspicious part is that all of them went to one specific cartel, the Sinaloa cartel. So
it sounds like horseshit. The fact that, who went to jail for that? Eric Holder didn't go to jail.
Oh, he should have.
He should have.
He should have. There's people died. There was and I can't say the name, but somewhere in Baja, a little girl lost her arm. An agent that was a friend of mine got killed, and the wife got killed with FN-57s that were directly related to that whole thing. Right. So
you can go to jail for fucking tax evasion, and this guy can get away with that. Just the idea that you would run that by people. And they would go, yeah, good idea.
Yeah,
give them guns.
And to be clear, I don't know the realities of that operation on this side. People say it was happening way before. All I know is that when that happened, nobody told us, and there was definitely some weird resentment on part of the government down there and some people down there, as far as And there was some weird conspiracy theories going on as well down there.
How could there not?
Yeah.
That seems like it's conspiracy theory right in front of your face.
Yeah.
Just the fact, oh yeah, we just sold them the drugs or the guns so that we could track them.
Yeah.
No one's going to die. It's not like a bad idea.
The main thing you would hear is people were...
Settlement. It's a furious executive privilege lawsuit between DOJ and House.
This is how it ended or wrapped up. Within the last 2 weeks, I guess.
Yeah. Really?
It's
this is just wrapping up?
Yeah, just some settlement on March or May 8th.
Because this is from, 9 years ago? 10 years ago?
At least. And the guy's still showing up. So I don't know how many of them, I've never known what numbers, but last time we found some, and I actually have images of the ones we found. They were buried in somebody's backyard inside of a water barrel. And all of them were obviously U.S. Origin guns. And they're like, wow, what do you mean? All of them had very specific accessories on them that nobody else in the world puts these accessories on their guns except the U.S. because they're pretty ridiculous accessories.
Like what kind of
things that had letters on them, like see you in hell type things on them, and Punisher skulls.
Punisher skulls are the big one, right?
Yeah. And
that is that a cartoon skull from a Marvel comic book has become a gigantic part of Spec Ops.
Yeah, it is pretty ridiculous. Well, main rumor down there, like conspiracy theory wise, and you would hear all sorts of things, because down there there's no such thing as top secret clearance in Mexico. There's like, hey, don't say anything. That's about it. So you'd hear crazy things. Main thing was that the U.S. was planning an invasion. They're destabilizing the region so they can put boots on the ground.
Oh Jesus!
That was the like a going conspiracy theory going on.
The U.S. eating Mexico.
Yeah.
How fucking crazy would that be?
Well, as far as a reaction on the side of Mexico, then this is purely speculation and the weird rumors that I would hear. People were planning to poison drug loads on that side to create a health crisis in the U.S. as a reaction. That was pretty, like when I heard it, it's like, holy, who's talking about this shit, and
so about war almost,
and then you would try to see, well, who's doing that? Cartels. So the cartels of the government are the same thing. Like, what's going on?
Right.
And again, this is just weird stuff.
This is a crazy perspective, right? The cartels would poison the drugs to punish the Americans for the military invading the country.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So to create a health crisis in the U.S. so they would have to go back.
Oh.
I mean, the rumors.
Did they know guns they brought over?
I've heard all sorts of numbers. We never got told the same.
Jamie's got a number. Nearly 2,000 firearms were illegally purchased for $1.5 million, according to the DOJ Inspector General report. Fuck. Hundreds of guns were later recovered in the United States and Mexico.
Yeah. Cows were. So it's always an escalation with the cartels, right? So they would get AK-47s and we would get German-made G3s that were around the same caliber, and we could fight back, right? Mm-hmm. And then all of our leadership started rolling around in armored vehicles. So let's get 50 cals to make holes in these armored vehicles. So it's always been an escalation,
Jesus Christ, you guys were getting 50 cal so you could shoot holes in the vehicles.
So the carts were getting them first, and then we had to get them because they were rolling around in armored vehicles. So Mad Max type armored vehicles. They would make first they would make them like homemade Mad Max armored vehicles. They found a few. They're online somewhere. One of them was called La Bestia, which is like a giant. All that was missing was the guy with the guitar on the back of it, like Mad Max. And they would use these to roll into town, and like, how would you fight that,
Right.
And then
so you had to get a 50 cal,
or get the military to shoot them from the sky.
Oh my God!
There's a famous video from somewhere down in Mexico where they shoot a Vulcan rifle down at a cartel member in a car, an armored vehicle. But then you see, checkmate government against the cartel. But then you realize that the cartels, like the New Generation cartels in Guadalajara, have actually downed helicopters in Guadalajara, military helicopters, because they have anti-aircraft capabilities.
Jesus Christ!
So now you're like checking cartels. That's how.
Where does this go? Like where? I mean, how far does it escalate?
That's the thing. You have to think about so killing and death is not at the industrial level that is being done in Mexico. Not just killing, but disappearing bodies, making bodies disappear. I was around when they got the stew maker. The stew maker was a guy that worked for the Sinaloa cartel in Tijuana, and he would get rid of bodies using caustic soda, right? So he would get bodies every night, and he had these industrial level, just barrels of it just going.
What is caustic soda?
It's a chemical mixture. Yeah, you can get most of the components at a hardware store. Basically, it dissolves bodies. He would get some of this mixture. He said in interviews that he got trained by Israelis how to do that. So who knows if that's true or not. But in the night, he said he would get rid of dozens of bodies, and this gets rid of everything. DNA, bone, everything. So there's a lot of families in Mexico that are looking for their kids for years, and there's just no way of giving them a body. And the amount of youth that goes into cartel work and just gets, killed there. It's whole generations and whole towns of women and old men. They're out there, which is like whole generations just gone. All the men gone. I've gone to a few small towns where like they looked at me like youth, a young man. It's like
so it's rare.
Some places it is
because they're all getting killed.
All getting got in the in the cartel operations and killed or just recruited. Forcefully recruited or voluntarily recruited, but whole generations just wiped.
For you to have your life on the line over there and see all this chaos and obvious either lack of organization or outright corruption, it must be insanely frustrating.
Yeah, well, the putting people in that were clearly guilty of things, and then seeing them come out. Or the legal system down there that I had to endure, you would have to go and do a face-to-face with all these people, right? Go into a federal courthouse, leave your firearms behind, do a face-to-face with these people inside that you just got for however many tons of cocaine or pot or whatever, and then go outside, and they're outside, Now I know who you are, there's no anonymity in that regard. So you would have to sign things, And then seeing some of the people that were with you working on your side, and seeing then how some of them would fall into corruption charges and then sue the government and then get your jobs back. But now you have somebody that's compromised within your own unit.
Wow.
They did try a few things to try and clean out police forces. One of them was a plan they called the C3 plan. It was like a filter for police officers down there. It's still in action, but it's questionable if it's effective or not. I saw a lot of people go through it, and later on they would turn out to be cartel guys. Basically, they would do a background check, FBI background check, polygraph exam, drug testing, all of these things to see that you were, clean to work on these police forces. The problem is that the polygraphs turned out to be unconstitutional to somebody over them. So a lot of these people got hired back after they would fail basic polygraph exam. It's a lot of attempts to clean it up, and you would be on the level, and all these people wouldn't be on the level, but they were still there. So
what percentage of people are not on the level, if you had to guess, roughly?
I mean, I'd say it would depend. I'd say 30% probably.
That's a lot.
Like on my experience of the people that I worked, that 30% weren't on the level.
Well, you must versus the 70.
Oh, like family.
Yeah,
like family. And you would know when some of these people weren't on the level because, I have this running joke that I have this. I went in with the same card that I drove out of the office with. Shitty truck that I had that I bought when I off my own dime, first car. And I drove out of the office when I quit the job that same day. I drove out of the office in that truck. But a lot of these guys would come in with their, Hummers and H2s and just weird cars. So like, wait a minute, this doesn't make sense. Oh. Like, we are working the same office. Why do you have a 3-story house?
That's so obvious, though.
Prove it,
Yeah, but the obviousness of it. Oh, blatant. You drive a nice car, living in a big house, and everybody else is like, what?
Yeah. But there's obviously these unwritten rules of you wouldn't tell on this guy,
of course,
but it's obvious.
Yeah.
And when it came time to share information of a certain kind, or we're gonna go over here, and you would have to turn around and look around, see who was listening.
Yeah.
You wouldn't trust a lot of these people. So how are we gonna do our job if we can't trust the people that are working with us?
Who was it that recently called for decriminalization? Was it your president that called for a decriminalization of all drugs in America to go along with Mexico? Is that what it was? Something about the cartels.
Yeah. We are on the brink of legalizing marijuana in Mexico right now. Like, there's been a few landmark cases, and it's gold rush type situation right now. There's a lot of companies down there that have had experience up here that want to go down there.
Right.
So the culture ready for it, I think.
Do you think that would help?
I don't know. When it comes to legalizing pot up here, it hasn't helped down there. As far as lowering things, it's actually made things kind of worse.
How's things worse?
They changed. I don't know. They changed what they were producing. So the reason,
to meth. Yeah.
The reason why there's a heroin epidemic up here and fentanyl epidemic up here, I think has some relationship with how things got legalized up here and how they switched product down there. So lighter colored heroin is coming down from Mexico, and I've seen. I work with law enforcement up here in the U.S. Doing classes, and kind of they send me things like, "What do you think about this, Ed?" And I've seen that lighter colored heroin pop up in places as far off as Chicago.
Because of the color?
Yeah, the smell, the consistency, you can kind of tell if it's Asian or
a different strain. Like,
it's probably a different strain, and it's also the amount of sun it gets in the region where it's being grown. It's higher altitude, so it's lighter color, not as stinky. I don't know, but I think it's a relation that kind of relates to the legalization issue down there. It didn't affect them in the pockets. They just switched product.
It's such a strange relationship, because the reason why these drug cartels have so much power is because they're selling drugs to the United States.
Yeah.
So it's like you have this connection to this country that has this great big wall that it wants to build, And on one side, everybody's buying up all the illegal drugs, and the other side, everyone's killing everybody to try to make and sell these illegal drugs.
Yeah, I mean, and there's a lot of holes underneath that wall, and drones. Yeah, drone technology.
Is that wall?
The wall's already been up for a few years.
Part of it
in places like Tijuana, which is like one of the richest drug routes on the planet, and the drugs are cost the same. You know,
it's the same.
And
like the ocean, can't they just take a boat?
I've seen one large submarine in my time working.
Large, like military size,
like scientific size.
Where the fuck does somebody buy a submarine?
Online, apparently.
Really?
Yeah.
You can buy a submarine?
You can buy a small submarine for a small amount of money. I think the main part of the submarine ownership is maintenance. That was the reason we found it, is that it wasn't properly maintained, so it
sunk.
Yeah, it actually floated, couldn't sink.
Oh,
and it had a bunch of things hanging off behind it.
But submarines scare the shit out of me. You can't see where you're going.
Well, I've seen submarines, drones, like a squadron of drones with a bunch of loads on it. Flying.
How heavy can a drone get? Still fly?
I've seen full like 2 kilos on it.
Really?
Yeah.
So just flying the coke over the top.
Yeah, and the only reason I found out about those is one of those crashed in a roadside next to the border fence.
Were you around when that CIA drug plane crashed in Mexico with tons of cocaine on it?
Yeah, I wasn't there, but I was aware of that situation.
What the fuck is that about?
I mean, realistically, there's a lot of Americans running around in Mexico.
Yeah.
That's
and there's a lot of cowboys, right?
Yeah.
A lot of people that say, listen, we just make this run. They're like, the government doesn't give a fuck about us. My pension sucks.
It could be,
Could be.
Every now and, and this isn't a secret. Every now and then you would see a dude out there that's blonde, tall, and has a bunch of tattoos don't belong down there, working on the military side of things in Mexico. Mm-hmm. Or some dudes doing something someplace, and then you would get a call. Oh, they're fine. Just leave them alone. Type thing. So who knows? Who knows?
So it's 3 out of 10 were corrupt. Where you were, it might be like 1 out of 10 CIA guys.
I mean, usually we would get to since I have a pretty good spoken English, I would get sent places for training or for liaison work with some people that would go down there, and I would never know where the hell some of these people were from, So
that stuff is legitimate. It's a problem, something that should be looked at.
It's just a shame that the judging is so poor, and it's been this way for so long.
Well, see, the boxing, I mean, you have and I'm not saying this in a derogatory way, in ways it's a good way, but you have a dictator running UFC. And no, but it's okay to have a dictator sometimes, because at least you have rules that are adhered to. At least you have structure.
Yeah.
And they're not taking people out and
I know what you're saying.
And so boxing has no real accountability, no structure across the board, no real lateral structure and nothing unilateral, because you have different states, different commissions, and they're supposed to be tied together, but they all act differently. And there's no national commission, there's no body, there's no dictator, there's no czar, there's no NBA commissioner, there's no NFL commissioner, there's no ML commissioner that overlooks and polices the whole sport. And there's no separation of church and state, so to speak, where the people making the money in the sport are separated, truly separated from the people administrating this. But there's no separation.
Right.
Promoters actually that are making the money and have obviously a horse that's running in the game, so to speak, that night, that they want that fighter to win, they pay the judges. And there's no buffer, there's no separation where you can have promoters and managers that can actually go to the commission and say, we don't want these judges to judge. They can't put this judge in, but they can knock judges out. And the commissions will listen to them. The organizations, they're corrupt. They are. I mean, it's not Teddy Atlas saying it.
It's everybody. People are going to say they're not corrupt.
Well, they're corrupt. If you're going to be honest about it, and you don't have an agenda, you're afraid to say it because you have an agenda, which a lot of people do in my business. They have an agenda, so they're not going to say it. Because part of it. If they're not part of it, they're friendly with that are part of it, and they want to have access. They want to have relationships. So they stay away from it, and they understand how the code works. So they understand, is it a smoky room with cars like the old days where Frankie Carbo was running things and you put an envelope? No, it's not that. But you might be paying $30,000 for an ad in a convention for the WBA or the WBC or the WIBF or WBO or whatever the heck they are, and you're paying $30,000 for an ad. What, you know why you paid the $30,000 for that? I don't think that you just like to see your name in the ad in the brochure. There was a purpose behind paying that ad, and so there's no. Again, you have the administrators of the sport, the commissions, and then you have the alphabet organizations that get paid a sanctioning fee from the champion. So they want that champion to win. And so they get the sanction fee. And especially if he's a popular champion. So you have nobody saying, well, the manager can't talk to the sanction organization. Promoter can't. Of course they can talk to them and say, I want my guys rated high. Of course they have access. So they have access to talking to somebody, influencing somebody to move their guy up in the ratings. These are honest ratings. And they have access to telling an organization, well, I'd like to push a mandatory. I'd like to put my guy to get the mandatory, which means, of course, that he's got to fight him within a certain period of time. He's got to fight the champion.
That's missing MMA.
Yeah.
That's absolutely missing in MMA.
So you have that stuff going on. And where is the
oversight?
Policing. Where's the line where, because again, people running the sport, people administrating the sport, it's not supposed to blur. Now, if you know where to go, in Europe, America, United States too, but through Europe where there's big fights, there was just a big fight with Joshua in London. He drew 90,000 people, which is good for the sport, and it's incredible. But if you know where restaurant to go to the night before fight, you will walk in the restaurant. I've been there. You will walk in the restaurant. I'm not going to say something if I can't behind it. And you will see at the restaurant, it's a big table, kind of like not the last, but it's a big table. And you will see all the officials at that table that are going to work the fight the next night. And you will see organizational heads, the heads of that sanctioning body and the guys that are in charge, the presidents, vice presidents, supervisors, judges, referees. And guess what most of the dinner is? The promoter. There's something wrong with that. I mean, there's something greatly wrong with that. Right. So the host of the dinner, and it's a big bill, obviously. I mean, it's a lot of people. It's a good restaurant. They're eating all the best stuff, drinking the best wines and everything else. So it's a big bill. And it's being picked by the promoter who wants a specific fighter to win that.
Right.
And he's got access to all the judges, all the officials, all the organizational heads. Now, so I would say to the people listening out there that just to make the analogy that really I think would hit home, the New York Yankees, they're obviously a universally known name and brand of organization, maybe biggest of all time. So how about in New York, you go to the best restaurant, and the night before a World Series game, you walked into the restaurant and you saw all the umpiring crew, all the officials that charged of the umpiring for the World Series game, sitting at a dinner hosted by the Steinbrenners. Problem.
Right. Yeah.
Giant problem.
Yeah.
And it can't happen because there's a commission would never let that, because the integrity, the credibility of the sport would be down the tubes a moment before you could finish your shrimp cocktail. But so it can't happen. It happens,
goes unchecked.
But it happens all the time in boxing. And just the look of impropriety is wrong. It should be wrong. It should be wrong in baseball. It should be wrong in football. It should be wrong in NBA. But it should be even more wrong in a sport where you risk so much.
Yeah. No, I agree. Yeah, it's a very, very good point. And I don't know how you would ever fix that. I mean, how would you have some universal oversight of the entire sport? And how would you get everybody from the WBO, WBC?
Nobody cares.
They wouldn't.
No, they don't care enough because the President of the United States started caring when there was a problem with baseball. He got involved.
That was about though, right?
Yeah, but it was
a problem. I mean, it was a real problem, but it was more of a problem of they wanted to clean up the image because it's America's sport. And they had these people,
but they're worried about where the fans were going to leave the game a little bit.
Right.
So it was a problem. It was a problem. It was impacting them. It was impacting. Listen, it was impacting the perception of the game, which impacted the gates,
right.
What they're going to make, and ultimately the fan base, which of course impacts them financially. It impacts the because if less people care about this sport, you're going to see it. And if you care about it, you're going to be one of the people that are left. So it was a problem, and they cared. I'm going to be careful saying this, but not that careful. But because to say it, I don't think that they care as much about the boxing.
I don't think they do. It's more of a dangerous, dirty sport in their eyes.
Yeah. And people that come into it and everything else, and I'm not going to get into all this stuff that you could get into that, is so popular to get into in some ways nowadays.
You mean like racism?
Yeah.
Right.
I'm not going to get into that because I don't want to, and I don't have, definitive show for that. Right. I just know how I feel.
Sport. The perception of sports, it's not cherished the way baseball's cherished. When there's a big fight like Canelo and Triple G, people get excited, and a lot of people will buy it, but it's not necessarily thought of as something that represents America. And particularly in Canelo, Triple G, you're talking about two people that aren't American to begin with.
Yeah. You put something in that book that really blew my mind. You said that in 1975 or 76, in Hudson County, where I'm from, there was 40 car bombings.
Oh, man. Yeah.
40 car bombings.
Well,
I remember one.
Bombings, not all car bombings.
Bombings.
Yeah.
In Hudson County, from 7th Street to 88th Street there, where you have Bayonne, Hoboken, that stuff, there was 41 car bombings.
That's incredible.
There was a time in the 70s in the East where bombings, homemade bombs, were like the preferred weapon of organized crime. There was a bombing war in Cleveland over this Irish gangster in the 70s. It was pretty common.
In Philly too, they made a bomb with the nails. And the Sicilians were good with bombs.
They did make a movie about Danny Green.
Yeah. What was that movie called?
Kill the Irishman.
And now they're redoing it again.
Well, they're doing the Irishman movie.
It's fascinating stuff, man. Now, did anything surprise you when you were put? I mean, obviously you're well versed in organized crime and well versed in these kind of communities.
I think the dominant feeling people will have when there's this book is the dominant feeling I had when I was researching it, which was, why don't I know this shit?
Right.
I mean, this is not only a great story, really interesting, but it's a really important history. All this political connection to the Castro movement and the role the U.S. government might have played in it, and the idea this criminal conspiracy organization was allowed to go on for 40 years because certain elements in the U.S. government didn't want to go after them because they were afraid it would open the lid on the Cuban relations with the anti-Castro relations with the CIA, the politics of it. That's not only interesting history, it's important history to understand a certain social, political relationship between the U.S. and Cuba, the pigs, the residue of the revolution, the way that shaped the Cold War, shaped U.S. politics over a period of about 50 years. So I was like, why don't I know this? This is amazing. This is like almost like a hidden history. I mean, I knew what reported in the newspapers, but you lift up the rug and you look beneath the rug and you start to get into the details of it. It just makes me so aware that what we're receiving as information on a daily basis from the mainstream media and everything is a version of what's happening. There's a whole other version of what's happening that we don't see. And you usually only find out about it 30 years later, 30 years after the fact. And that's a good thing to know.
Yeah, it sounds to me like this is. I mean, I haven't heard a peep about this. I mean, when you brought this up to me, Joey, and I was like, "What? The Cuban organized crime, the corporation? Like, what? What is this? Like, this is not discussed. It's just not discussed."
Well, hopefully this will.
I grew up in it, and I never talked about it because, like I said, I have 100 stories we goof around. I ate Lucy Stormbush's pussy, and
Right.
there's a lot of shit I say in that. I don't say it because, number one, you're not going to believe me, and number two, it's not my position. I was raised as not for me to say. Do you know what I'm saying?
Yes.
But I saw that as a child, and then what made it worse for me was moving to North Bergen. Once I moved to North Bergen, I saw what they were doing in Union City in a bigger way, which is all political. I saw things that'll make your tongue drop. That's why I don't give a fuck about politics. And when I see people talking about politics, I want to go up to them and go, if you knew what you were talking about, you wouldn't say a word because you have no idea what real politics means, how it works. If it works like that in a micro system, I can't imagine in a real. So I don't want to pay attention to it.
Now, Joey, ask you a question.
Go ahead.
Because Joey and I connected when I had more or less written this book already. If I had come to you way at the beginning of this, out of the blue, all of a sudden this guy TJ English, I don't know, I guess you knew the West, you knew who I was, you knew I was legit.
Yes.
If I had contacted you and said, will you talk to me about this history, would you have done that?
With everything, it would take us a week to debrief me.
So you're ready and willing.
I would have.
It's interesting about
everything I would have known because somebody has to hear this fucking story. He opened up the door for me. I have a responsibility now that I have another story to add to this.
Yes, he does.
I have the nuts and bolts of how this worked.
Have you thought an addition to this?
I think there's going to be a number of spin-off books from this. This is really...
The book comes from this.
People will tell personal
I will
stories.
I will end up dead.
Really?
I will end up dead. Not because of what I'm exposing.
But we know who did it.
In a you know, I grew up when I was growing up. The power in that Hudson County was the waterfront. Gee, that picture in New York City that people see, thousands of people died for that waterfront. That waterfront was controlled by Weehawken, but everybody wanted a piece of it. And North Bergen wanted a piece of it. So my 8th grade teacher was the Weehawken mayor. You ever have a teacher that was a mayor? Why would your teacher be a mayor of a town? Why? Who's ever had a teacher tweet that was the mayor of a fucking town at the same time? I did. And guess what? At the end of my 8th grade year, I saw ATF come in and pull him out of there.
Really?
He did 11 years. Okay?
What was he doing?
He was selling the waterfront. All that they knew that was money.
Deals.
There's a particular family that I will not mention because I won't even make it to the 405. And they were buying that property up
Lucchese.
in the 60s. No. They were buying that property up in the 60s. They were posing as politicians. They chop up $30 million a month now between 4 of them.
And then sell it.
No. This is from all the property they own in Hudson County. They bought everything. Jersey City, Hoboken.
But they make their profit selling it, no?
No, they made their profit renting it.
Oh, rent it.
So the 4 of them, the 4 brothers chop up $30 million. They go their own ways. Every month they chop up $30 million. So I saw it from North Bergen. When I tell you stories about Carmine Balzano, he was a cop. He was a cop that I got invited into. He opened up his home to me. Then his son died. The one that was my age, so I became his pseudo son. So here I am running with the Cubans during the week. They're talking about numbers and drugs and everything, and I'm growing up in a cop's house. That's also the driver for the mayor, and he would do whatever. Like I saw him handcuff dudes and throw beatings on them, and they called him Vinny the Torch. They called him Carmine the Torch Balzano because his job was to burn your building down. The last one he burned down, kids were like, Mister, there's smoke. And he's like, here's $10. Go get ice cream. I'll call the fire department. He never called. He faked a heart attack, so you don't have to talk to reporters. First thing you do is you fake a heart attack because you don't have to talk to reporters. That gives you 2 days to get your story straight with the attorney. You have no idea what I know.
Now, Now, the reason I asked Joey the question about whether he would have been willing to talk is a lot of people reached out to me early in this book process. The movie rights before I even wrote the book based on the book proposal, and I got a lot of attention. And I started getting emails from nieces and nephews of sons and daughters of key characters in this story, and there were people like Joey who had kept this personal family histories bottled up for 30 years about it. And now they saw I was doing this book, and they needed to get it off their chest. They needed to talk. I met these two girls who were daughters of one of the guys who became a snitch, testified against the corporation. The family went into the witness protection program. These girls had never talked to anybody. When I went to meet with them in a bar, they weren't even sure they were going to talk to me. We were just meeting to talk about whether they were going to talk to me. I got to meet them. They talked nonstop for 3 hours. Once they thought they could trust me, they couldn't stop talking about it. All this stuff they needed to get off their chest.
Wow. We were raised not to say Ugats. Ugats. The first raid I saw on my mother, I was 5. They sat me on a couch and raided. My mother had already thrown the coke off the balcony to the lady downstairs. The landlord had already called her and said the cops are on the way out the door. We lived on the West Side Terrace facing New Jersey. And the lady downstairs, she would pay her rent and tell her, hold this bag. My mother threw it. They came up, sat us down. They asked us to leave. Went to 88th Street. 88th Street, we never got raided. When I moved to North Bergen, I would get raided. Before I got raided, the phone would ring. It'd be Carmine Balzano. Tell your mom to clean the house. I'd wake my mom up, tell her to clean the house, and come over here. I don't want you to see what's going to happen. Cops would come and arrest my mother. I would walk to Carmine's house with my basketball right past the cops. And it was that easy. It was that easy.
Wow. Do you run into Joey before you started writing this?
It would have been a book. He
Yeah.
wanted. Why I enjoyed this book so much is because no matter how much history this motherfucker dropped on you, he let you know who Jose Battle was. He kept you reminded who Jose Battle was. That's big for an author. He never got away from Jose Battle. And when you read the book, no matter what type of person you are, you kind of get mad at Jose Battle, but there's something about Jose Battle you like because you want that guy in your corner.
See that article I sent you about the USADA corruption?
Yes. So about that.
Yeah, so basically, and this was like a WADA press release too, so it's not like it was some journalist or something. It's like on the official WADA site, and they were basically exposing how USADA was covering up test results. So unnamed. As
Which
far
sports?
As, they wouldn't say. They just said like Olympic level athletes and elite athletes, and kept it very vague. Really? Essentially, they disclosed what they had tested positive for, and even that one of them was an Olympic caliber athlete, and their entire career they got to go until retirement without getting exposed just because they helped USADA supposedly catch other people. Oh. So so if you help them catch people, then you could get away with using like full board testosterone.
No, really?
Yeah.
Oh my God, so they're like a drug dealer that works for the government.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, and this was like one of the reasons of many why like Hunter and others are very critical of USADA and are glad they're not under it anymore.
Well, there's a stupidity with their regulations. Like one of them is BBC 157, which is natural in the human body. You know, and peptides, all they're doing is helping you heal.
Yeah.
You're literally dealing with a sport where you beat the fucking shit out of each other every day in training. And you're not going to like assist these people in healing? Like, wouldn't that only benefit everybody? There's no like fear of like harm. There's like no one's dying from BBC 157. Within the code, there's a provision whereby an athlete who provides substantial assistance can subsequently apply to have a proportion of their period of ineligibility suspended. Wow, look how they phrased that. What dirty language. Proportion of their period of ineligibility suspended. What does that mean? It means you're allowing them to cheat. However, there's a clear process for that, which does not involve allowing those who have cheated to continue to compete while they may or may not gather incriminating information. Wait a minute. What are you saying then? So it doesn't do that. They're saying it doesn't do that. Well,
At the WADA is now aware of at least 3 cases where athletes who had committed serious anti-doping rule violations were allowed to continue to compete for years while they acted as undercover agents.
Okay, so they pretended that they wouldn't let someone compete if they were doping, but they still did.
Yeah,
Is that essentially
while they were on shit.
Imagine if that's like boxing in the Olympics or something like that. The athlete was allowed to line up against their unknowing competitors as if they had never cheated. In that case, when USADA eventually admitted to WADA that what had been going on, it advised that any publication of consequences or disqualification of results would put the athlete's security at risk. What? And asked WADA to agree to non-publication. What?
Yeah.
Were they worried about that with Lance Armstrong? What the fuck are you talking about? Security at risk. In another case of a high-level athlete, USADA never notified WADA of its decision to lift an athlete's provisional suspension, which is an appealable decision, despite being required to do so under the code. Had WADA been notified, it would have never allowed this. Interesting.
And it sounds like it was somewhat how they operated, as if they had a high-profile enough person, or in circumstances they would kind of autonomously decide, hey, if you work alongside us to catch other people because you might know something that we don't or what have you, then we'll just let you, no one will know.
That's so dirty. That's so dirty. That's literally contrary to the whole reason why they exist.
Yeah.
What's really crazy is, according to the UFC, so what happened was the UFC had some disputes with them and decided to sever their relationship. And then USADA publicly said that UFC is going to allow their competitors to do steroids now, which is not the case at all. They already had a contract in place with Drug Free Sport. I talked to the guy from Drug Free Sport, and he was essentially laying out the it was essentially identical. No BPC 157, no testosterone growth, nothing. You can't do anything.
The standards are actually much higher now, too, in contrast. Like you said, I would claim, or at least suggest, that they were doing full spectrum bulletproof testing, but it turned out they were almost never EPO testing. The HGH testing was never really done, and then also the isoform, the isotope ratio mass spec was not really being done either.
Was that a butt thing? It was too expensive to test?
I believe so, and also time intensive. For some of these tests as well. And I guess for the number of tests they were conducting, perhaps it was too extensive, or I don't really know what the exact motivation was. Often you would think it comes down to budget and time, but also if you have an expert who just thinks it's not warranted to go further, the same way if you went to a doctor and you'd be like, should I test this? They'll be like, oh, if we know this, who cares? It's not necessary. I don't necessarily know they went to the depth and rigor to claim somebody did or didn't cheat if I have, preliminary data that you would exclude having to go further. Sometimes you don't have to, test further if there's not an atypical finding. So
yeah, but if they're not testing for EPO, for example, and maybe there's an event in Mexico City, right, which is 7,700 feet above sea level. That place is brutal. That's where Cain Velasquez, who was known as probably the greatest cardio heavyweight of all time, he fought Fabricio Verdum, and he did not prepare properly. Fabricio actually moved to the mountains above Mexico City and trained there for 4 months. So Fabricio, who speaks fluent Spanish, lived in Mexico, he was really got ready, and he beat Cain Velasquez in that night to become the champion. And he had tremendous cardio, and Kane was just dying. That's how brutal Mexico City is. So imagine when you're competing at that altitude, or maybe Colorado Springs, or one of these really high altitude places, which we have events, Salt Lake City, and you don't test for EPO.
Yeah, no,
that's
insane.
Crazy.
Yeah.
That's crazy, because that's the place where you would do it, particularly if you're defending your title or you're challenging for a title.
Yeah, some of this stuff, even if you're looking for it, is quite difficult to detect anyways. Microdosing EPO is still, they're trying to refine the parameters and determine with greater scrutiny how to detect it. And
how long is the life it's detectable inside your body?
I believe it's a few days, and that's if you're using that's not a microdose protocol either.
Well, how much benefit do you get from microdosing?
Fairly significant, given you can, even just retaining your baseline parameters if you're weight cutting, can be quite helpful. So it's almost like offsetting, for example, the suppression of hormones or the suppression of like any sort of parameter that would decrease with heavy nutrient deprivation. If you can sustain it at normal, is performance enhancing in
Right.
contrast to your competitors who are also weight cutting and might not have the same